He certainly likes the quick stuff.
Especially when getting paid.
Well, a slightly emotional Sky Sport cricket vlogcast today not because it was 7.5 sessions for England to win the first test of the series, because it's the end of a brilliant career, one of Jimmy Anderson, started back in 2003. Facebook wasn't even around when he first started, and he could have done a Stuart Broad taking a wicket with his last ball, but he dropped the catch. Could you believe it, Kumar?
Yeah, I know. It wasn't a hard catch as well. Jimmy's very good at catching. He spends a lot of time in the slips as well. That would have been a perfect send-off, isn't it, to finish off. I remember Murali wanting to get his 800th wicket and taking on the challenge of playing just one test and trying to get those 8 wickets, because he said if he does that, that we win. And he was bowling at Naman Ojha, and the last wicket, he somehow managed to get it. But, you know, whether he took that catch or not, I think, looking back on what has been one of the most exceptional fast bowling careers of all time, Jimmy can be very proud of what he's achieved.
Yeah, Bish, usually we're on air for this vlogcast with about 10 minutes to go at the end of play. We've decided to wait to the end. Presentation is on at the moment. Nobody has left the ground, which is as a mark of the great man.
Yeah, and I think it's the whole pomp and ceremony and felicitation of him is well done and should be commended, because when you've shifted the paradigm in the game, because it's just more than the 700 wickets plus that he's taken, he has actually set a new dimension in terms of fitness, in terms of skill levels. I know I studied his in-swinger quite a lot. I almost became a better bowler after I retired, just by studying his wrist position for the in-swinger. And what he would have sort of encouraged in other bowlers, as you've heard from Gus Atkinson, what he can do if Jaden Seales speaks to him, if Shamar Joseph has a chat to him before the series is closed. I think the felicitation is well due, and it sets a standard for guys like Atkinson to follow.
We're sitting here with no one from England, so we've got the West Indies, Sri Lanka and Australia covered. You faced Dale Steyn in the masterclass before the start of today's play, one of the greats. Where does Jimmy sit amongst them all? I know it's exceptionally hard to try and... I'm not asking you to rank them all, but to Bish's point about longevity and sort of changing the game.
Well, you can always talk about how each fast bowler in each era was relevant to the batters and that played in that era, and then you can talk about skill, you can talk about different parameters that you can use to measure with. You know, Wasim Akram and his skill, Malcolm Marshall, Ambrose Bish, hooping outswingers at 155, you know. Then you can talk about Steyn. But when you put everything together and you think about longevity, you think about skill, you think about reinvention, you think about consistency of pace, you think about refinement of skill, and then being able to do that over such a long period. I'm not sure whether you can talk about whether it's McGrath, whether it's Steyn, I'm not really sure whether there's anyone that can really, when everything's put together, stand where Jimmy Anderson is standing today.
He retires, but he stays around this group, which is exactly what you want at some stage, isn't it? You want him to be able to pass on that knowledge, and there's a skill and an art to that too, because some of the greats can't do that. He's going to do it straight away in the next Test match. Do you feel as if he deserves or should have a little bit of a break before that, or should he just get straight into it?
That depends on the individual, I think. However, if we look at the positives of that for his personal well-being, I found in retirement, and some people don't. Some people are very clear on what they want to do post-retirement. Some people aren't. So this will give Jimmy a chance to settle into that post-playing phase, to find out if this is something that he wants to do long-term. If it's not, he can tick that box and probably be sitting here with you and Kumar not too long from now. But I'm a big believer that we must not waste the knowledge that guys like him, that Kumar, that Jasprit Bumrah, the late Malcolm Marshall, Courtney Walsh, we must not waste what they have learned by not allowing them to formally pass on, while still fresh, what they have done.
I thought he might have, just at the end there, he was coming in from the nursery end, which is the end that he started at all those years ago. I thought he might have just come up and just swapped the bails over like Stuart Broad did, just to get that last one, but he didn't do that. The other big talking point, for that matter, coming in from the pavilion end, the end that was used to be Jimmy Anderson's, and all of a sudden it is the changing of the guard, isn't it? 12 wickets for the match. It is a phenomenal first test.
Kumar, I just think, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that Gus has flown in under the radar here in this celebration. I can't think of
How do you fly under the radar taking 12? It's amazing, isn't it?
Because the guy has taken 700 and whatever
only
played for
way.
21 years. Look, I think it's such a great story. I can't think of another occasion where a great player has retired and someone of like trade has come in and done as well as Gus Atkinson has done. And I'm not saying Gus is going to match Jimmy's career, but from England's perspective, to have the great guy walking left and the guy starting and auditioning and now has performed so well that he's no longer an adjunct to this England setup, but he must now be at least a medium-term tenured fast bowler. So one question answered for the moment with Gus.
What's going on at Surrey? Smith and Atkinson comes into this test and just picks up the game like that.
Yeah, and talk about changing of the guard. Alex Stewart at Surrey, who's done an incredible job to set the pathways and get the right people in and funnel these young players through that system into the national side. He's stepping aside. He's still in and around the setup for a handover period. Whoever takes his place, again, it's a similar thing to Atkinson coming in with Jimmy on the way out and playing his final test. It's the same thing. There's a huge responsibility that comes with it, understanding what is required. But Surrey, I think, has been outstanding in terms of how it's apportioned its resources the right way. And you can talk about, it's a test venue, it's the richest county going around. It's got great facilities, etc. But it all starts with people. If you don't have the right people in the right places with the right vision and alignment, you're never going to go anywhere. And Surrey has had that because of Alex Stewart. And I think that's something that Surrey needs to seriously look at when Alec is stepping aside, who comes in and how that alignment continues and that kind of conveyor belt of internationals come through. Because in the in the English game, when you're a county, you have two primary objectives. Number one is to look after your members, make sure that you have a strong team and you're playing strong cricket and you're self-sustained. But as important is, how do we produce players for England? And Surrey's done that, won both very well.
Okay, good people on board, Bish. So let's cast our mind to the West Indies now, because a couple of days off that they haven't...
going there.
I know.
I was finishing up there. That's where my mind went. I said, Mel's going to go there.
You know me too well. A couple of days rest. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the West Indies squad does and how they utilise those days. But let's cast our mind forward to Trent Bridge and the people within the camp. How do they manage? It's that player management piece for one, just I guess the mindset of this group to get them to turn things around. Game style, selection. There's a few questions there, isn't there?
Yeah, a number of questions which we don't have enough time to get into. They did it in Australia where they lost at Adelaide, which wasn't kind of a surprise. It was a young team as well, not too different from this one.
True.
And then they managed to pull off something remarkable at Brisbane, right? So they've got that memory. Here is another challenge because people, West Indians at home, are going out of their skin because the team did not go past, 150 or something in 2 innings. It did not surprise me. Kumar knows better than anyone else how difficult it is to come here as a batter, a young batter. And I've always felt most West Indians who've come here on their first tour as batters have struggled. It's the second time they've experienced it where most, not all, but most of them have managed to benefit. So now I'm thinking the bowling I think will get better. Shamar Joseph I'm hoping will get better for the run out that he has here once he's fit. But I don't know from a batting perspective how, my burning question, Mel and Kumar, and for our viewers, Mikhail Louis, I think, looks as though he has the goods. Alec Affinis looks as though he has the goods. Ashe Hope looked as though he had the goods with those 2 twin centuries and 1 or 2. How do we mature them? How do we procure them? Because the talent is there. But the burning thing we have not touched on is how do we take them from potentially good to world class? And that's what I'm going to be studying a little bit more over the next few days in between test matches and what they'll be thinking of.
Yeah, so that's a long-term vision, though, isn't it? So how do you balance that? You're involved in a lot of teams around the world. How do you balance that in the middle of a series?
Well, that's the tough part, and I think Bish hit the nail on the head. Pre-preparation and the length of that preparation, because it's not just England that you're preparing for, right? It's a whole FTP of forward tours, white ball, and then trying to balance out players wanting to play franchise cricket and how much time do they really have to dedicate to developing their overall skill, which is needed for Test cricket. But I think there is no doubt that looking at how the West Indian team plays, there's a burning desire to do well and win
100%.
wherever they go. And you see that. I saw that in Australia, and you see that coming here.
Yep.
Everyone is motivated to play for the West Indies, play for each other, and win. Now, that's what you want to do. Now, the question is breaking it down to how, and making that in terms of very achievable, realistic targets. If you're the batting unit, the first thing is, how do we get to 300? How do we break it down? What do we do? How does our team bat? You have Craig Brathwaite, who's very attritional in his approach, takes a long time. Mikhail Louis, I think I really like what he has as a foundation. Technically, he's very good. But now, how do you expand from there to score the runs? Who plays with the typical West Indies flair? And how you give that message to the player? Actually, I know it's going to be risky, but you doing this and taking a few more risks and preparing to do that both mentally and skill-wise is acceptable to us even if you fail, because that allows us to change the game, change our style of batting. It allows us to break free at certainty and not allow England to continuously hit a line and length and bowl the 16 overs we saw yesterday for almost like 20 runs. That shouldn't be happening, because the West Indies are so talented. All the batters, we've seen that when they are on a roll, when they're in rhythm, when you spend the time, how free scoring they can be. But they need to be unafraid and very decisive in attack. Score runs. How do we do it? Once you do that, with the conditions, the Duke's ball, the pitches as they are, I saw Gudakesh Moti, if there's a little bit of turn, he's going to be super dangerous. They have enough skill in their bowling attack. Hopefully Shamar Joseph stays fit. But if they want that bowling attack to flourish and impact the game, the batters have to give them something to play for. Don't think of 500 and time and batting 2 days or anything. How many runs can we actually score, and how much do we need to really try and challenge England?
If I may just quickly add to that, I know we're running out of time. When they won in Brisbane, it was still too early for one batter to come in and dominate, because they don't have that world-class batter there yet. It was Joshua Da Silva, half-century, Kabem Hodge, half-century, Sinclair down the bottom, a half-century. And when they got 300, they put Australia under pressure. So at this stage of their development, unless it's Craig Brathwaite or Jason Holder, who scored hundreds in this format before, it's guys chipping in, as Kumar said, and building everyone from top to Gudakesh Moti to Alzari Joseph to Jaden Seals, chipping in with that bat.
Which is what England did in the first session with the bat. No one went past 100 yet. There was 5 half-centuries. So changes for England, where do you see them going for the next test?
I don't think they've got much to change, really. I'm not sure whether Wokes will play the next test. I think we were also talking about it, saying, well, do you play Jimmy and Wokes together in the same side now? Isn't it time for them? So I think England has one eye definitely on this series, but also one eye on what's to come, which includes the Ashes, Sri Lanka next. So these 2 tours gives them a really good opportunity to mix and match, especially their bowlers, but then at the same time allow their batters, under Jamie Smith's debut, a really consistent run to get those runs, get back into the rhythm of playing Test cricket, and start dominating and being confident in how they play. But they might make a couple of changes here with Jimmy going, who they bring in. Pennington's in the squad.
Potts,
Potts, yeah. So there's
a few options
there's enough. So they'll just look at it as, what's the combination we're going to play in the future as we go along? How do we get them ready by blooding them slowly but steadily within an experienced group now?
Okay. And probably one of the highlights of the day, just to finish things off, you rang the bell.
Sweaty palms. You don't understand how difficult and sort of self-aware it makes you when all the members turn around and they're staring at you. The cameras are there, and you don't have a bat.
And you've got to make sure that
he's the sides. You don't have a bat or ball in your hand, which you're accustomed to now.
Talk me through the arm flex at the end, because that was almost like Craig Brathwaite when he mentioned to Rodney Hogg at the end of the Gabba. Those muscles big enough
Greg
for it.
Blewett did it in Australia. Was it at Adelaide, and he let out a roar, and he went, "Oh!" So I was just teasing one of the members there that
Gotcha.
that's the Greg Blewett bell ring. But I'm very honoured to have done it, but more so, I'm so happy that we were here for Jimmy Anderson's celebration and his final test.
Yeah, 100%. So it's a win to England by an innings and 114 runs in the first test. Bish and Kumar, thank you so much. We'll be joined at Trent Bridge next Thursday for the second test. Join us then.